Hello, hope you're doing well today. I have two topics for you today as you continue work on your poetry final. The first topic is avoiding overusing the block quotation. Second topic is avoiding plagiarism. So, first topic, block quotation. We want to avoid overusing it. You have a paper packet in your paper folder, and the packet is titled Integrating Literary Quotations. In that packet on the back page, it speaks specifically about how to cite poetry, and it does tell you how to cite a block format for poetry. In MLA format, if you cite more than 3 lines of poetry, you need to do so in a block format. So take a look at that packet or the Purdue OWL to see what that looks like. First, though, I'm going to talk about why you want to avoid overusing that block format. I have an example here of a paragraph that I've taken from a former student's poetry final. The first paragraph here shows how a paragraph looks using the block quote. And then in the second paragraph, I'm going to show you the better way to go about doing this. Okay, so let me read the first paragraph to you that uses the block quotation. This student is analyzing Harry Shug's poetry. Harry Shug is actually a local poet. He works right at St. Ben's and he has a couple books published. Here's the paragraph that uses the block quotation. A big frickin' iceberg, dude, is a comment on global extravagance and wastefulness. It may seem that small human actions are not going to affect the environment, especially in Minnesota where we actually appreciate warmer winters, but they do. Shug notes society's self-interest and wishes for change. You know it's partly your fault, but don't sweat the gestalt. Just add some more salt to the glass rim of your next margarita while you ponder the meaning of karma. Society is unwilling to change, even in the possibility of destruction. For some people, ecosystem changes would not be much of a nuisance. It may affect them positively, with Minnesota being in this group. Decisions made by those who are not affected by harmful consequences have the opportunity to harm. Human greed and disregard for the planet are Shug's never-ending nightmare. Society is killing the earth, and for what exactly? Enough ice cubes for 99 zillion pina coladas, says Shug. The cynical poem shows Shug's distaste toward those who work against a healthy planet. So it has a good warrant at the end, good topic sentence. The point is clear, but in this format, the writer isn't really able to analyze or comment on how these lines fit with the main idea or the claim, how these lines help support the claim. Look down here at the revised version. This student rewrote this paragraph to omit the block quotation and integrated the lines of the poem right into the paragraph. And that allowed the writer time to explain how those lines help to support the claim. Here's how the revised version looks. A big freaking iceberg, dude, is a comment on global extravagance and wastefulness. It may seem that small human actions are not going to affect the environment, especially in Minnesota where we actually appreciate warmer winters, but they do. Shug notes society's self-interest, describing our extravagance and disregard. Just add some more salt to the glass rim of your margarita, implying that the reader of the poem would rather indulge in tequila and forgetfulness than take notice of the environmental destruction. Even in the face of such destruction, society is unwilling to change. Human greed and disregard for the planet are Shug's never-ending nightmares. You know it's partly your fault, he admonishingly tells the reader. Society is killing Earth. And for what exactly? Enough ice cubes for 99 zillion pina coladas, Shug writes. This cynical poem shows Shug's distaste towards those who work against and those who disregard the importance of a healthy planet. So in the revised version, a few of the lines were left out, but the lines that were included, the way it's included allows the reader room to explain what those lines mean, like this explanation right here, implying that the reader of the poem would rather indulge in tequila and forgetfulness than take notice. So being able, here again, after this line, the writer was able to add the explanation. He admonishingly tells the reader, breaking apart your block quote and just quoting 1 or 2 lines at a time, and then clearly explaining what those 1 or 2 lines mean and how they support your main idea is the better way to go. Now, I'm not saying never use a block format. There might be occasions where you do need 4 lines of poetry before your explanation. So only use the block format when you must. If you discover you have a lot of block format in your paper, it's probably too much, and you probably don't have enough explanation, interpretation, telling your reader how to interpret those lines. So shoot for this kind and not this kind of paragraph. Good. Second topic, let's talk about avoiding plagiarism. In English 1101, we worked very hard on citing our sources and avoiding plagiarism. We said anytime you are looking at a source, anytime you're using information from a source, you need to cite it. We also talked about common knowledge. Common knowledge means if I can find a source in 100 different documents, sources, that's common knowledge and I don't need to cite it. The common knowledge rule only goes so far though. If you find one date, so let's say you're writing about Langston Hughes and you included the date that he was born. If you use one piece of information from a source and it's considered common knowledge, there's no need to cite it. But if you suddenly take a whole paragraph worth of information from a source, that source deserves credit. You need to cite that source. Individually, this writer of this document right here could argue that all of these sentences might be considered common knowledge. I don't think they are, and I'll explain in a minute. But even if you can argue all of these sentences are common knowledge, because so much is taken from the source, that source deserves credit. And your reader is going to start wondering about you. Like, you didn't cite this. Where'd you get this from? Your reader is going to start wondering, are you citing anything? Which ideas are yours and which ideas are from sources? It's unclear at this point. Look at this example, and you'll see it's very clear. All this information is taken from a source. In Joplin, Missouri, 1902, the famous Langston Hughes was born. Hughes suffered through his early childhood. His parents divorced when he was just a little child. Not only did his parents divorce, but his parents moved far away from each other. In fact, his father moved from Joplin, Missouri to Mexico. Since his father moved to Mexico, Hughes had very little contact with him, and it devastated the young boy. After his parents signed the divorce papers, Hughes lived with his grandma in Kansas, where he spent most of his childhood. All of this is taken from a source, isn't it? I'm going to keep going. As a young boy, Hughes was a very voracious reader with skills that exceeded that of his classmates. He never thought much about poetry, though. When Hughes turned 13 years old, he left his life in Kansas and moved in with his mother and stepfather, and on it goes. This student looked at a source when this was written. All of this information did not come straight from their head. Either it came from notes or from looking at the source. That source deserves credit. This has to be cited. Otherwise, this is considered plagiarism. Further, not all of this is considered common knowledge. Some of this is opinion-based. Things like, he had a rough childhood. Was that from a source? That's an opinion. That should be cited. A better example, though, it devastated the young boy. Not all sources are going to report that the same. Some sources might say it was good for him because he had to be independent, maybe. That needs to be cited. He had skills that exceeded that of his classmates. Not everybody would agree which source is giving that information. That has to be cited. You cannot write a whole paragraph like this with information that is obviously biographical and from a source without letting your reader know which source. So here's how you do it. Let's say right here is where I'm going to start my copied information from a source. I'm going to go with a signal phrase, something like according to, and let's say it's Poetry Foundation. According to Poetry Foundation, sorry, can't type very well. According to Poetry Foundation, still struggling. And then I give some of my information. I'm going to have to make it clear throughout this whole thing, though, that all this information is from my source. So I have to think about, my reader can't misread. I'm going to have to give a few more signal phrases. His parents divorced. Not only did his parents divorce, they moved away from each other. His father moved from Joplin to Missouri. I'm going to put another one in here. Poetry Foundation also notes that since his father moved to Mexico, Hughes had a very little contact with him. It devastated him. After his parents signed the divorce papers, blah, blah, blah. As a young boy, Hughes was a very voracious reader that exceeded that of his classmates. Poetry Foundation further notes. So throughout, I'm going to give my citations so that my reader knows that all of this information is from a source. And then I've done my ethical responsibility. So, 2 main points here for today. Avoid overusing the block quotation and cite your sources. Don't fall guilty of plagiarism at this point. Cite your sources. Post your comments below if you have questions. They're good for the whole class. Reach out to me individually if you need some help. I hope your poetry project is going well.